did an excellent job. I mean, this council has set a vote, and they just done what we told them. Make sure that you didn't go over that, and you know, that's what's happening. I think as far as the culture is concerned, I think you have a good mixture. French culture, English culture, and all kinds of culture. So it's there. We didn't say we were going to solve it all in 1 year. We said we work towards that, and I think that's what the committee has done. And I just want to commend the chair, Dennis Carter, and the rest of the committee for doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, one of the disadvantages of speaking late in the game is that there are just so many things you want to respond to. And I guess the first thing I'd like to do is to clarify. The motion before us is really to accept the way in which we've allocated this money. But the budget has been set with this amount locked in within the broader budget. So we're not talking about increasing anything here. I mean, the most we could do is maybe take $10,000 from somebody and put it somewhere else. But okay. So having been part of the budget steering committee, I approve of the way we allocated the few dollars we had. But I think that we made a few mistakes along the way, and I was later, in the context of the report on sustainability in our document, going to take issue with that phrase, we have to decide what business we're in. We are not in a business. We are in a service. And I mean, I checked it in our own council documents that the clerk prepared for us when we began our term, and I checked it against the book, probably from which you drew that resource as well. We have to be fiscally responsible. We have to be prudent. But that financial pressure on us is the means to the end. The end is actually to deliver services. Somewhere along the line, we let the discussion of service get pitted against the discussion of taxes. Taxes are the way we provide services. And so when we talk about reducing the tax that we levy as a means to go forward, I think we're going backwards here, because if we're not keeping up with the cost of inflation, the cost of living, then in fact we're shrinking our offerings and our services. Now, I think it's lamentable in every other department and all the discussions we allocated more money to everybody because people needed more money just to be able to maintain the status quo. But with our outside agencies, we actually cut. Now, Mrs. Adams, can you tell me what percentage rate this overall $500,000 that we allocated to these agencies, how much of it had this represented to each one? I think it was the same amount for each one.
It was 9%.
So let's not kid ourselves. We can say we support the arts, but if we're cutting 9% out of our support, talk is cheap. And that's a great example of that. So I think where we went wrong here was we instead of analyzing the needs and then raising the money accordingly, what we did was we allocated so much money to these outside agencies, and then we just used the scissors to the extent that we had to make the two fit. And I think where we proceeded there with that area was our mistake. But I do support it. I was part of the committee, and I feel really bad about this.
Mr. Cleveland.
Well, I wasn't part of the committee, and I was away for a lot of this period of time. It's good to be back. And I can't support the recommendation. I have read all of the minutes of the Budget Steering Committee, and I have been in contact with the CFO, so I feel that I'm up to speed. I want to thank Ms. Cascanet for the excellent minutes, by the way. She's very good at that, and I felt like I was there at most of the meetings. I think that an across-the-board reduction is an effort to be fair, but it's not the right way to go. We have a strategic planning document that sets out our priorities. And when you're making decisions, financial decisions, you should always be going back to what your strategic priorities are. And your agencies, your outside agencies, should be telling you how they support, how they advance your vision, our vision of the city. And I don't think that this has been done here. I know that Councillor Thibault, through the minutes, was asking the outside agencies to provide a business plan, and I agree with that. I think that there should be more information. I, in fact, think that we should review this whole grant process. I don't think that it's correct. I think we should send a message to the public that this will not be done again this way next year. And I think that we should really have the outside agencies tell us look at our strategic planning document and tell us, how is it that your activities advance the strategic plan? Our strategic plan does speak of the arts, does speak of a trend towards that. That's what we're choosing to do in the next few years. So we would want, presumably, our outside agencies to focus on that, and we would want to fund those agencies. And new agencies, if they fit into that priority, so be it. And old agencies that don't necessarily fit into those priorities, so be it as well. That's tough for us. It's safer to do it this way, but it's not, I think, the most efficient way, especially when we as a council are setting strategic priorities and trying to communicate to the city that we have a vision, when our outside agencies are not, we're not requiring our outside agencies to support it. So I won't support the recommendation, but of course I thank the committee for all of the work. I know that it's a lot of work. I read those minutes and I appreciate that. So I don't criticize the work, I just criticize the process.
Councilor Shaughnessy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, I'll be brief. In the Budget Steering Committee and approved by all of council, there was $100,000 worth of reductions that were taking place within the outside agencies. For fairness, for this year, we felt as a Budget Committee that everybody would be treated equal for this time. But then again, when you're talking about our strategic plan, our long-term planning, a big component of that is not completed yet, and that is the study that is being conducted by the Eastern Ontario Training Boards, Cornwall, or whatever, for the cultural plan. And once that cultural plan is done, brought together, and some sort of an infrastructure can be put together for that group and that organization, then at that point in time, that number can definitely be reviewed. Mr. Mayor, council agreed with the 100,000 reduction. We thought it only fair that it be equal across the board.
Councilor, any question?
Just to come to the point, and I realize that, whenever there's a budget reduction, that people are not happy and how they're going to manage with it, but one of the things I can assure them is, now we're into May. This is the 5th month, and we thought it was important to get this exercise finished, so at least some of the money was out there, and if the timing of how the funds are passed over to these organizations, when you're talking about cash flow, there's certain things we can do in that regard. But I guarantee you, and I promise you right now, we're going to work with the finance department and come up with a set of rules and some criteria for applying to the city and asking for funding for whatever agency you represent. And we're going to do that fairly quickly. So we're not going to put anybody at the last minute. They know well and ahead of time. There'll be discussions with the various groups, I don't doubt. But we're living in a different world today. And we, as Councilor Tebow said, every single department in the city of Cornwall took a hit from where they wanted to be and where they said, no, you can't, you've got to go here. We know there's no more funding coming to us, but working on the budget now, we already know there's not problems, but there's been an increase in the cost of fuel, some $130,000 over budget at this particular point in time. How are we going to fix that? We're going to tell, there's pressures on this municipality. And the pressures are going to stay there for the balance of this calendar year, and they're going to go into next year. But we think we're up to the task, and I'm sure we are. And this, we've said it more than once around this council table, we believe in the future of this community, and arts is an important part of this community, and we're willing to work with arts to make sure that things happen. But the way we're going to work out is not by writing checks. Okay, it's going to have to be work. And if you want money from the city, we've got to have a sit down, and you're going to have to justify how it's funded, and we're going to be asking you, where else is your funding coming from?
All those in favor? Opposed? Carries.
Item 2, landfill